Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into a really thought-provoking stack of sources. We're looking at how certain historical patterns, manipulation, secrecy, how they might cast a different light on major events. Our mission here is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights for you. We want to help you get truly well-informed on what's, frankly, a very complex topic.
Yeah, and what's quite compelling, I think, is how these materials seem to lay out a consistent blueprint, at least in modern U.S. history. It's this idea of manufacture a crisis, shape the narrative, and then, well, expand control. And we're talking documented facts here, like Operation Northwoods. That was a proposed false flag plan to blame Cuba. Or think about the Gulf of Tonkin incident. The sources strongly suggest it was exaggerated, to trigger deeper U.S. involvement in Vietnam.
That's a powerful framework they present. And looking through the research, it wasn't just military actions, was it? This pattern seems to extend to domestic control, too. I mean, the sources bring up examples like the Tuskegee syphilis study.
Where treatment was withheld. Controversially, yes.
Right. Or the CIA's MKUltra program.
Ah, yes. Testing mind control drugs.
And even the FBI's COINTELPRO, their counterintelligence program that targeted civil rights leaders. The patterns highlighted are quite striking.
They really are. What emerges from these historical accounts you look at Iran-Contra in the 80s, right up to more recent events, it often seems to be that same sequence. Crisis creation, controlling the information flow, and then a noticeable expansion of governmental power or reach. So when we apply this specific analytical lens to 9/11, as these materials do, several underlying motives start to come into sharper focus.
Okay, that's where it gets particularly interesting. Do the sources dig into the strategic side of things beyond just the stated goals, maybe like access to resources or geopolitical positioning?
Oh, absolutely. The documents we reviewed point pretty clearly towards geopolitical gain and resource access as potential primary drivers. For example, just weeks after 9/11, the U.S. invaded Afghanistan. Now, beyond dismantling al-Qaeda, these sources highlight that this move also potentially granted access to, well, an estimated $1 trillion in vital mineral resources. We're talking lithium, rare earth elements, crucial for modern tech and defense. There's even a quote attributed to General Wesley Clark suggesting a broader agenda, referencing long-standing Pentagon plans to target 7 Middle Eastern nations.
Wow, and connecting that to the bigger picture, this blueprint, as the sources laid out, seems like it might have been a play again with Iraq, even though there were no verifiable links to 9/11, no WMDs found.
Correct.
Iraq was invaded in 2003, so how do the materials explain the public support for actions like that?
Well, the analysis suggests the post-9/11 climate, the fear, the anger was really instrumental. You had, 78% of Americans supporting the Afghanistan invasion initially. The sources argue that this kind of emotional manipulation can pave the way for conflicts that might ultimately serve other interests, elite interests, potentially, with U.S. oil companies later gaining access to Iraqi fields, according to these documents.
So the sources suggest it wasn't just about global reach, but power at home, too. That the trauma of the attacks enabled a huge expansion of domestic power and surveillance.
Precisely. Take the Patriot Act. It was rushed through Congress just weeks after 9/11. It granted these sweeping surveillance powers that, probably would have faced immense public resistance under normal circumstances. But fear, as the research here notes, can effectively silence dissent. This crisis, according to the analysis, served as a profound control mechanism, leading to long-term shifts like creating the TSA, the warrantless wiretapping that Snowden later revealed, and the rise of the Department of Homeland Security. It's presented as a recurring theme in history, using fear to reshape society. A bit like the Red Scare, or Japanese internment, perhaps.
Okay, here's where the investigation presented in these sources really deepens. They highlight specific anomalies from the 9/11 events themselves, things that, well, they certainly invite more questions. For Flight 93, for instance, how could wreckage, including an engine piece, reportedly be found 8 kilometers, like 5 miles, from the main crash site if the plane supposedly crashed intact?
That is a point raised, yes.
And with Flight 77 at the Pentagon, how does a huge Boeing 757 125-foot wingspan create only an 18 to 20-foot entry hole? And why has no clear, unambiguous video footage ever surfaced publicly?
Another major question highlighted in the materials.
Then there's Flight 11 in New York. How did an alleged hijacker's passport apparently survive intact blocks away? Blocks away from a crash that supposedly vaporized steel, while almost all other paper was destroyed. And relatedly, why was Mohammed Atta's bag, reportedly full of incriminating evidence, just left behind at the airport and missed the flight?
These specific points are laid out quite clearly.
Yeah, and the sources emphasize these aren't just, wild speculations. They're presented as specific, reasonable questions based on reported inconsistencies.
And if we try to connect this to the broader implications, the analysis points out that while these questions are often dismissed, you see the U.S. government gaining significant advantages in the aftermath. Global military expansion, trillions in new defense spending, unprecedented domestic surveillance powers through laws like the Patriot Act. Which really raises an important question for you, the listener, based on these sources. Why does simply asking these clear, reasonable questions highlighted in these documents, so often result in someone being labeled a conspiracy theorist, instead of just maybe a citizen demanding answers based on documented issues?